It's the County Conversation, episode 13. And this week we have a T20 Blast focused. We finished the first of two blocks. And to celebrate, we've called in the power hitters. First of all, we have the cricketers, Nick Friend. And second of all, we have Sussex captain, Tymal Mills. Tymal, welcome to the show. And first things first, how has captaincy been? I know this was a kind of a new gig for you at the county this year. Is it difficult? Are you any good at it? How have you found it?
I guess you have to ask the players that question. But yeah, I've loved it so far. I've never actually captained a game of cricket before in my life at any level before being captain in the Blast this year. But yeah, I've always been, well, at least for the last 5-6 years, I've obviously been a senior player down at Sussex. Even when I go overseas and play franchise stuff, I'm always quite vocal, and I find I'm more engaged in my cricket if I'm, brought in and trying to kind of help as much as I can on and off the field. So it was something I was keen for. When Rav left last year, I spoke to Farbs and said that I was keen to do the job, kind of put my hat in the ring, and they obviously, the coaching staff had a chat and decided that they wanted to give me that, and that was back in I probably knew, I reckon, November, December time. So I had a long time to plan and get ready, and then it was good to get that first game kind of under my belt. I played a second team game, and we had a warm up game just to get those first couple out of the way. But yeah, I've loved it, and the boys have been brilliant. And it'd be a different question, I guess, if we were sat bottom of the South Group. But we've obviously started really, really well.
Can you just explain a little bit about how the situation of how it came about? Because obviously you'd have been hoping to be part of the World Cup squad at the moment. So when it comes to week one and you're captaining Sussex, are you kind of like, I didn't actually want to be captaining now. I wanted to be captaining later. Like, how does that kind of dynamic work in the conversations with the management?
To be honest, we just planned as if I was going to be here. I went on the England tour to the Caribbean in December and didn't quite go as well as what I probably would have liked to. And I knew that Jofra and Mark Wood were going to come back into the squad. So there were going to be fast bowlers that were going to miss out. Obviously myself, Chris Wokes missed out. Gus Atkinson also, Chris Jordan coming back in as well. So if I'm being honest, I didn't expect to get picked in that World Cup squad. So I was preparing fully to start the Blast and prepare for all eventualities there. So yeah, from my point of view, kind of from the new year onwards, I was planning to play in the Blast. And if I did get called up to the World Cup squad, that would obviously be awesome, and we'd pivot and go from there. But if I'm being honest, I wasn't expecting to, I'm afraid.
And then last one for me on captaincy. You mentioned this is your first time you've ever captained a game of cricket, which is quite a wonderful statistic.
Did you tell him that?
I was going to say, was that part of the job interview? I've never done this before, lads. But I'd like to do it.
Yeah, I don't know if Farbs knew that I'd never actually captained a game. I've never even captained a club game before. I'm not completely sure they knew about it, but they obviously saw enough in me to give me the job.
So as you mentioned, an amazing statistic that you've never captained a professional game, not even a professional game, any game of cricket before. But you've obviously played a hell of a lot of T20 cricket. When you're walking off the pitch as this newbie captain, how do you define success? How do you look back on yourself and go, you know what, I've done that well today?
Oh, good question. I think maybe more overarching success is winning. That was when I sat down with the coaches pre-season. As a captain point of view, I think we judge success by wins and losses. And I spoke quite openly with the group, was that I wanted to win the Blast this year. I'm not playing the Blast to not win it. I play every game to win. Now, whether that's realistic or not, whether we have the personnel or the ability to do so, would come. But just as a starting point, I want everybody to go into the competition wanting to win. So I made that very clear when I first started to have conversations with the boys. And the second thing I said I wanted to be judged on is how much improvement our individuals make. And one thing that I spoke to all the players about and the coaching staff was, we have such a potential for growth within our team, because myself aside, we don't have any international players in terms of T20 cricket. This is any international players. We don't have anybody playing franchise cricket up until yesterday we didn't have anybody else in the 100 within our team. So our room for growth and our room for improvement was huge, and I didn't want our players to be limited by their ambitions and think, okay, I'm going to play in the Blast and then I'm going to forget about T20 cricket for the next 8 months, 9 months. So I wanted our players. Yeah. I wanted our players to improve, and luckily, look, the 100. This is obviously good timing for the interview, but 3 of our players obviously getting 100 wildcard gigs yesterday on the back of how they've performed so far in the Blast. I'm not saying that is because of me, but that's something that I'm really, really proud of.
I'm saying it's because of you, Tymal. I think it was because of you.
Well, I'll take the credit if you want to give it to me, but I'm really proud of them, and I'm really happy for them, and it shows that what you can do. That's the whole point of the wildcard system, and now going to the 100. Tom Alsop and James Coles and Ollie Robinson will then, I'm sure, take even further steps from sharing the environment in the changing room with regards to that. So, look, I wanted to take the club forward. If we're being honest, if I was purely about winning, I could have probably left at some point in the last 3 or 4 years when we weren't that great a T20 side and gone to try and chase a Blast trophy elsewhere. But I didn't want to do that. I want to win at Sussex. This club have given me an awful lot over the last 10 years, my 10th year at Sussex. So I wanted to give back to the club as much as they've given me. And I know that sounds cliche and maybe a bit cringy, but the club have supported me and given me an awful lot in this last 10 years. So if I can play a part and give back and try and bring a trophy to Hove, that would mean a lot. I haven't won the Blast. We lost the final in 2018, and I've been to numerous other quarterfinals and finals day. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we've obviously made a brilliant start. So those are the 2 things I wanted to really be judged by as a captain, was how well we do on the field in terms of actual wins and losses. I want us to win. I want us to be a winning team. I want us to make the quarterfinal was kind of minimum expectation, and then I wanted our players to. I wanted to try and help our individual players as much as I can, and try and help them reach whatever potential they have, and then so they can push on and get higher honours with the 100 and franchise cricket if that's what they aspire to be, which I hope that they all do aspire to go and do those things.
Did you push the wild cards as a motivation to guys? Obviously it's been there for the last few years, but it is 16 spots for 350 odd players, isn't it? Like it's I guess if you focus too hard on that, it could probably be quite healthy at the same time.
No, to be honest, I didn't mention the wildcard stuff at all throughout the Blast. What I did back in January, February, whilst I was in the UAE and in Pakistan, I called around each individual player in the squad and just had some of the chats lasted 10, 15 minutes. Some of them lasted kind of half an hour, depending on kind of how chatty each person was. But I went through, if I wanted to get to know them a bit better about their T20 cricket, how they thought about T20s, how much they knew, just to kind of just get the boys thinking about T20 cricket a bit more. And one of the things that I asked everybody was what your aspirations were for the game. And it was interesting to hear how some of the boys were open and honest about how they want to play in the 100, they want to play in franchise cricket, whereas some of the guys didn't say that. And that doesn't mean they don't want to, but it wasn't something that they kind of pushed upon me. So it definitely was on some of the guys' radars. But no, once we started playing, I haven't mentioned it at all. And to be honest, until the Thursday or Friday, I didn't even know the wildcard draft was on Monday. So until I actually met with Giles White at Hampshire on Friday before we played Hampshire, and obviously he heads up the Southern Brave stuff. So yeah. I spoke to him on Friday, but no, I wasn't pushing it. But honestly, I'm chuffed for our guys getting picked and deservedly so.
And you mentioned guys with that much T20 experience upskilling. I mean, obviously you've had Ollie Robinson for the first 8 games, and he's someone who I think first got into the professional game through T20 cricket at Yorkshire, but equally hadn't played a T20 game for 3 years coming into this Blast. I mean, was it quite obvious to you how you were going to use him? Did you expect to have him as much you've had him? And I guess, did you expect him to go as well as he has done?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't. When we were planning the team and talking about potential combinations throughout kind of the spring and pre-season, I didn't have Ollie in my thoughts at all, if I'm being completely honest. I thought he'd probably play in the championship block at the start of the year. He'd then have some time off, and then he'd get ready for the test matches that were coming up. But as soon as we got to kind of that 5th or 6th championship game, I spoke with Ol and just to see where he was at and what he was up to. And He said he was really keen he wanted to play T20 cricket. Didn't know how many games it would be, but he was certainly keen to play at least a few. And I was like, okay, brilliantly. Obviously, there's a skill set there. We didn't have Brad Curry at the start of the year whilst he was at the World Cup, and it's always great to have a new ball bowler. He obviously played, and he's been outstanding, and his skill level's been so high. He does what he does with the red ball. Really, he manages to get the white ball to move more than most other bowlers can, whether that be swing or seam. So it's been a big weapon. I think I've bowled him for 3 overs in the power play every game this year, which is a really, really hard job. And it's one thing that our analyst, that Luke Dunning, said to me back in the winter, which stuck with me, was that not that he's gone very well every game, but even if you have a new ball bowler that's really suited to the power play, it's almost better to bowl them all 3 overs in the power play for the benefits that you get in the rest of the innings. So if I'm not having to bowl 2 overs in the power play, or the knock-on effects of the whole 20 instead of just looking at it over six overs. So that stuck with me. So Ol's been outstanding, and I know he's really looking forward to the 100 as well.
Does he surprise you at all? Because you two have had, I don't know, obviously, you're both England internationals, but you couldn't have had much more different careers over the last decade. Your paths, if you didn't both play for Sussex, your paths almost probably wouldn't have crossed. And I remember watching play at the Oval, I think, in the game when he beat Surrey by 40 odd runs. It felt quite incongruous just seeing him in coloured kit. I don't know, I guess everyone knows how skillful he is, but yeah, I don't know. I guess most people's assumption is if you run in and bowl at 8 mile an hour and hit a length, blokes will take you down the power play. As he surprised, Craig Overton's done that role with a lot of success for Somerset. Did you expect him to go as well as he has done, or was it a bit of a gamble at the same time?
I don't think it was a gamble. I think he's certainly, if he's fit and keen, he's certainly one of the best bowlers that we have. So it wasn't a gamble to play him.
Yeah, sorry, the role more than the.
Yeah, I think that the continued success, you don't often get somebody go so well for so long in terms of in T20 cricket. You're bound to have a few games where you get whacked, and that's obviously the nature of the game. But so far, he hasn't. But it's because he's got such high skill, and he moves. As I said, if you move the ball, he both moves it through the air and off the seam. That's difficult, especially maybe the Kookaburras are doing slightly more this year. I don't know, but he's finding a way to really move the ball. And obviously, because he's tall, he gets bounced as well. And as I say, he's just a highly skillful bowler. And the thing that probably gets overlooked, and this might sound simple, but he puts the ball where he wants to put it. So because he's got such great control, that helps. A lot of bowlers can't do that. A lot of bowlers might bowl 3 or 4 balls out of the over where they want to go, and then they'll miss twice, and those 2 balls probably get hit for 6. Whereas Ollie's bowling the ball where he wants to, probably 5 balls and over, and then his 6th ball that he misses, it's only a small miss, but because he's seaming it and swinging it, his margin for error is obviously greater. So I hope that answers your question.
And you've obviously called out Jopper as well. What's the go there? Do you expect, is that more hope than expectation, or don't know? Are you expecting to have him for that second block?
I don't think we're going to have him for a lot. We may get him for maybe a game or 2 at the back end. I know that he's going to be managed. He's obviously essentially contracted, and everybody knows about his extensive injury history. But it's great to see him doing so well and playing regularly and training regularly. But from what I understand, he's going to have a little break whenever the England World Cup does finish. And fingers crossed we'll get him. Even if it's just a game. I know if he's playing our last group game at Hove for us on the 18th or 19th of July, whatever it is, I'm sure that would be great, and the people will come out to support him, because obviously he hasn't played down at Hove for a while. But I'm in his ear, don't worry. But I know he is going to have a bit of time off, I think, after the World Cup. But fingers crossed we will see him in the Sussex shirt.
I'm so relieved you've explained. Me and Nick have a little note sheet, and on one of them, my question was, why is Ollie Robinson good? And you kind of explained. So I was trying to work out, as Nick said, 80 mile an hour on a spot. In theory, I've heard people say you can't just bowl length. And then you're going into the details of kind of using him in the power play, how that increases your overall attack in the rest of the innings. And this was, I think Nick was saying this to me. He spoke to your coach, Paul Farbrace, and he was like, you've got to hit the top of the bat or the bottom of the bat. Just miss the middle. And that's kind of where Ollie Robinson shines. Right, we're going to move on to pod. Easy game. Exactly. What's the problem? We're going to move on to part 2 of the podcast now. Tymal, I wanted to ask you a little bit about England. You mentioned it a little bit at the top about how you weren't actually expecting to get selected for this squad. But I feel like you've had such a kind of unique experience over the last 3 World Cups. 2021, you missed out the semi-final. I remember you being held up as almost like this saviour type figure when England lost that the semi-final. It was like, oh, well, we didn't have Mills. So like that was one of the main reasons. Then 2022, you're a non-playing member of the winning squad. And that's must be an amazing, but also slightly bizarre and unique experience. And then coming through to missing out on a squad. And so from a purely human level, what is it like to kind of miss out on the most recent edition? Is it kind of deeply disappointing, or was it a case of actually I saw this one coming?
Yeah, I definitely saw it coming. And I've had a weird relationship with England, I guess. I've kind of been called in for World Cups and then not really played an awful lot outside of that. But yeah, I didn't get selected for the series at the end of last summer against New Zealand after, I was leading wicket taker in the 100 and then didn't get picked for the T20 series. And I didn't overly agree with the reasons they gave me for that. But I came back into it in the Caribbean in December and I didn't bowl as well as what I could. It was obviously a very high scoring series against the West Indies, but I didn't do as well as what I could have, and then also didn't bowl brilliantly in the ILT20 in the new year after that either. So honestly, as I said earlier, I wasn't expecting to get picked for the World Cup unless there were injuries. I was kind of a standby player. I was told to be ready. Should an injury go down, I could potentially fly out there, but obviously I wasn't in the initial squad, which was fine. And honestly, I'm very, very at peace with it. I'm not, because I haven't been in that England team. It's not like I was Dave Willey who missed out on that 50 over World Cup, who had played every game or whatever leading up to it. I've been very in and out with England for the last few years. So whenever I do have been selected, it's obviously brilliant. That 2021 World Cup was it 2021? Sorry, in the UAE was obviously brilliant. I had a brilliant year. I got back into this team. I played every game. I did well, and then I got injured, and that was probably the toughest moment of them all. Sat watching, me and Jason Roy both injured, sat watching that semi-final against New Zealand in Abu Dhabi. That was as tough a day as probably I've had in cricket, if I'm being honest. But that's part of sport. And yeah, that T20 World Cup in Australia, I went initially as a travelling reserve, and then got called up just before the first game when Toppers did his ankle. So. So I didn't play. So you say it's a different feeling. You can say you're a World Cup winner. I've got a medal and stuff in the house.
Absolutely.
But you want to play. You want to be out there, as all players, all professionals will tell you. You'd rather be out there in the middle, bowling that final ball or hitting hopefully I'm not hitting the winning runs, but you'd rather be doing that than not playing. But it was that was an awesome. I look back on that month or so in Australia with great pride. That was a brilliant month spent with some great people. And obviously you win that World Cup. I missed the birth of my son to be there, so that was tricky. So I obviously got home on the first flight after that World Cup final. But this one, as I said, to be honest, I haven't even watched too much of it. To be honest, I've been playing. Obviously, been busy in the Blast. The hours of the game sometimes aren't the best to watch, are they? But I didn't expect to get picked, and I'm completely fine with it.
Guys, what's the vibe of the Blast being around this World Cup? Remember when the schedule first came out and for the World Cup, rather, it became clear where it was going to take place and what that would look like from a domestic perspective. Like, there was a lot of talk then about how it would overshadow it and how it would, obviously, you lose the England squad, you lose a few overseas players, I guess you might have been about, and talk about like a dilution of quality and that kind of stuff. Has it felt different to normal Blasts, or in reality, actually, to not all the England squad play, they might be resting after the IPL, looking ahead to a Test series. There might be a Test series going on. Increasingly, we don't get the same overseas players coming over. Like, has it been as different as people suggested it might be pre-comp, or?
A little bit. I don't think too much. You do lose the quality of, say, guys like Harry Brook, Liam Livingstone, these guys that do traditionally play in the Blast for their counties, Phil Salt, and the like. Chris Surrey obviously lost 4 players.
Yeah.
There is definitely you do lose a bit of quality there, and then you certainly lose the overseas players that sometimes you get. We had Shadab Khan, for example, as an overseas player in the Blast last year. Players of that standard obviously aren't available for the first half. I see there's some deals for some players to come and play after these last 6 games once their teams are knocked out of the World Cup, which is great. But no, I think mostly overall it's been pretty chalk. Just the schedule isn't great in general. I don't think you find many players that will say it is, but the actual standard has been, I'd say, pretty similar to it has been most years.
On that, we're gonna talk for a little while on kind of what your ideal Blast looks like, and part of that is kind of mixed up in the schedule. And I know we've got a Blast captain in the room, but actually we're going to ask Nick Friend what his ideal Blast looks like first, as the kind of scheduling kind of master. I think we've actually had the same, or I think you said this idea to me. I forgot you said it to me, and I've.
I remembered last night that someone said it to me. I won't say it was initially.
But maybe there's a growing movement for what we're about to suggest. I'm excited. I'm a bit nervous for tomorrow to hear it, and whether
I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting because I think there are a lot of potential pitfalls, a lot of things that have been said against this idea, but historically, and almost sort of far enough back that it's not been discussed for a while. Like we were saying, someone said to me, and Cam said to me last night, this was his idea, and it's not. It's at best third hand to him. So that if we take the big issues in the game to be, particularly around the Blast, to be back-to-back games, and then you get out the group stage and you don't play quarter-final for 6 weeks. I'm increasingly intrigued by the idea of having essentially a summer-long structure. So you play the Champo game Sunday to Wednesday, and then you play a Blast game every Friday night. I know for a long time the blocks were held up.
He's already shaking his head.
He's already shaking his head.
Gone badly.
The reason I said I was intrigued by this is because for a long time this was held. Obviously, the block was held up as the big push from the player side. One of the reasons being overseas players. The other reason being what sort of not wanting to jump between formats and skill sets. But with an increasing number of guys playing, sort of specialising in a single format, and you've got where it's increasingly difficult to get overseas players in for a block anyway. You've got the same 2 overseas players essentially for the remainder of the season across formats until Nadcat replaces McAndrew in September. Like, is that more feasible than it was? I'm guessing by the very early headshake, no. But I feel like the other issue with the calendar that Cam mentioned a few weeks ago is that there's no structure to anything. So you don't. I mean, this is a broader schedule point, but there's no continuity to the way the schedule works. And I guess the one thing that would do is if you played a Blast game a week every Friday night, a Champo game a week, first half of the week, then at least everyone knows where they stand. Then you hit August and things stop for the 100 and One Day Cup, and there's a natural break. But you're not having this situation now where you've got 2 weeks of Champo stuff, which people are also pretty anti. And then flying back into 6 Blast games at the start of July. Like, obviously, there's no perfect solution, and I wouldn't say that's an ideal Blast. And I also think the Blast is too long in general. I don't think you need 14 games. But is that, where do you stand on that vague idea?
Yeah, look, that's how obviously it used to be, didn't it? Or there were periods of time where back when I first started, where the Blast, it was kind of Friday night Blast and Championship cricket during the week. I think you won't get any overseas players. You'll struggle to get any decent T20 overseas players come and play. If you're saying you don't need them, then okay, that's a different argument. It'd be a nightmare for me, playing one.
Yeah, I was going to say you'd have a very quiet life.
Yeah, like I don't enjoy the schedule as it is at the moment because we're playing. The first 2 weeks we played Friday, Sunday, so then Monday through Thursday you've got nothing to do. Like you'll train on a. Yeah. Obviously our boys have been playing 4-day cricket, have a couple of days off, Monday, Tuesday. So I'll come in, do a gym Tuesday, I'll train Wednesday, Thursday I'll gym, and then I'm kind of just, you want to play. So that schedule I don't think is overly ideal, but I can see the merits in it, and as you say, continuity and the like. But for me, I could totally agree. The Blast is too long. It shouldn't be 14 games. I've said this I've been doing another podcast on the BBC, but I understand that the counties it's pretty much only 14 games because the counties need it to be, because they need the money from 7 home games. there's no other league. The IPL is the only other league in the world that has 14 group games, and you can certainly argue that the IPL should be longer because it makes so much money and it's so big, and it's it's the second biggest sports league in the world in terms of TV rights after the NFL. So per game, it makes an absolute bucket load, and I think we can all agree that the streams aren't bringing in that much money for counties.
Not got a £4 billion deal.
Exactly. So if there's a way that this new money that comes in from the 100 could mitigate some of that, I think you'd get a better quality blast from 10 group games. I think 14 is very, very long. I think the structure's poor in terms of that if you could win all 14 of your group games and then get knocked out in one game in the quarterfinal.
Yeah.
There's no
That
reward.
only takes place 6 weeks later anyway.
Exactly. So there's no reward for winning your group, and when winning your group is really hard when you play 14 games. But if you do win your group, you're clearly the best team. Whereas in a 10-game group, you can have a bit of, it tend to be closer. You might have a bit of rain that will affect things or whatever. But every other league in the world has that kind of second chance element for teams that top the group or come in the top two. So I think that's something that could be looked at. I just think 14 is just long. You can't get good overseas players come for that long. Bowlers, especially, you're going to do well to get an overseas bowler come and want to play 14 games. I think Riley Meredith might be the only one that's signed maybe for the whole competition who's actually playing. I don't know, he's already sat out a game or two. Most guys are coming for 8 games or 7 games, where you can sign players up for 10 games. That's obviously a lot more palatable. The Big Bash recently cut from 14 to 10 because it just wasn't working. Players didn't enjoy it. The viewing figures were down on TV. And obviously every game of that is televised, whereas the Blast isn't. So, I think if there was a way to cut the Blast and maybe mix up the group so we could play some new opposition as well instead of the North and South, I think that would be really good as well, because I've played the Blast my whole career, and I've stayed in the South group, so I've only played the same team. So I think it would be nice to freshen things up. But I understand it's very easy to sit on a podcast and say these things. But
that is exactly what we're going to do. We're trying to.
Do you know? So do you know? Can you guess the? Well, not guess. There are 4 teams. There are 4 teams you've never played in the Blast, despite having played in this comp for.
Yeah.
So Ravi Apara will play Durham next week for the first time in T20 cricket. He's been here since day 0. Yeah.
So I've never played a game at New Road. New Road's the only ground I've never played at in my career.
But you played the final against them.
But I was at Edgbaston, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll never have played against Leicestershire.
Yeah.
In a T20. I have played North Ends. Derbyshire, I've never played against. Lancashire.
You played once against Lancs.
Did I? Oh yeah, I did. That was the T20 quarterfinal COVID year. Yorkshire.
Once against Yorkshire.
Have I? God, don't remember that either.
There's a surprising omission here. I'm trying to work out what the county are.
When did I play against Yorkshire?
You played against Yorkshire in. You're going to have to make me find the actual game now.
Oh, sorry.
Hang on. 2021 quarterfinal. At Chester Street. At Chester Street. That would be worse.
When they made the boundaries small.
Yeah,
small. Like they were at Headingley, but anyway. Oh God, I'm not sure. Birmingham. I don't think I played against Birmingham.
Yeah, Birmingham
and then give me the last
Notts.
Notts. Okay, yeah.
Which is odd because they are Birmingham win their group every year.
Yeah,
and Notts obviously been a very successful Blast side, but it says so much about how stagnant it's been, isn't it? That you can somehow have 2. Sussex were so successful around the same time that Notts were very successful, and like you just never cross paths.
Yeah, and it'd be great. It'd be great to do that and go to different grounds and different crowds, and just have fresh matchups. But we'll see what happens with the schedule, I guess, over the next couple of years.
So if we're kind of in a blue sky world, what we're kind of hoping for here, if you were designing yours, you'd be going from 14 group games down to 10. You'd be hopefully putting in like a second chance element where if you win your group, whether you go straight to finals day or you played a quarter and you can lose a game effectively. Yeah. One thing, before we move on to the next bit, would you be wanting to bring in finals day back closer? Because that's something as like a fan I find kind of so frustrating in that you build to this crescendo of the group stage, which in reality, it's probably only fought over who's finishing fourth or fifth. If someone's won the group, then they're already kind of confirmed at the back end of the competition or the group stage. Would you be bringing that finals day back and those quarterfinals back into the same block of time, basically?
100%. And I think by reducing the schedule to 10 games, you obviously create space, don't you? And you could hopefully then play. You could probably play Tuesday, Friday, Sunday for 3 and a bit weeks. Get your group games done in that block, and then you can have a week for quarterfinals, and then you can have finals day after or whatever. But yeah, by losing those 4 group games that every county plays, you create 2 weeks of schedule, don't you? So I think 100%. There's no other league in the world where you play a group stage and then you don't do anything in the competition for 2 months or however long it is.
Of course, by getting rid of 4 group games for you this year, essentially you'd gain back 4 days, right? Like you've got I think you're on the 7 counts. You play 4 sets of back-to-back games. So you've got coming up 2 games in 20 hours, Kent away, 6 home, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
6:30 start, 2:30 start. Like for someone with your body, like I guess with your body, but also as a quick bowler, like but then thrown in the curveball of being captain as well. Like how complicated? I guess how complicated was that anyway for you? Because back games aren't new, but obviously the captaincy element on top of it. Like, can you play? I mean, you've not always played You've not always played back-to-back games, have you? Like, but I guess how much of a risk is it to play those two, particularly someone like you? You've got the 100 coming up afterwards, which is an enormous part of your year, and then I guess the 100 is then the sort of like the dress rehearsal for the winter almost. You can pick up gigs through having a good 100. Like, how risk is that? Like, it feels like a bit of the schedule gets missed when people talk about the back-to-back stuff. Like, if you get injured because you've been the coach for 3 hours, and then you've tried to get 100% again, herring around the boundary, and then your hamstring goes and you miss the 100 and you miss the chance to earn for the winter. Like, how big an issue is that? Is that part of the? Is that part of that debate? That
for players and for each individual and for selfish reasons, you're right. You're completely right. If you got injured in your penultimate group game, and then, as you say, you missed the 100, and the knock-on effects that could have for the individual player, that's huge, and that'd be terrible. And I'd hate to be in that position. But as a captain and from the club's point of view, you want your players available for as much as you can, and you want to try and put the best side out as possible. I know at Sussex we haven't rotated anything yet. We've played 2 lots of back-to-back games. I've played them. The only reason I wouldn't play them is if I pulled up sore on the day of. But so far I've been feeling good. My body's been okay, and I've pulled up well on both games. I think the task is, we do have, as you say, we have 3 games in 4 days with an away game in the middle of it, which again is just terrible scheduling, if you ask me. But so we might have to rotate a little bit then, myself included. And if I have to sit out a game, I'm sure it's different doing it at the back end of the Blast when you're in a good rhythm and players know their roles a bit more and stuff. But I said we'll cross that bridge when we come to it in a couple of weeks. But those are the type of things that I know everybody speaks about schedule a lot. You've obviously written and spoken about it a lot as well. So you don't need me to. I don't think you've found anybody that said it's a good thing and it's a great and it's awesome. But obviously you want to put out your best team where you can every game, and unfortunately the schedule doesn't always allow that, which is a shame.
Something you touched on before, the other side of the schedule almost, because there's so much across the back end of the week. What do you do with Monday to Thursday?
My wife's got a long list of jobs. I've got 2 young kids, so so today's a nice day for me. My wife's at work in London, and I dropped the kids at nursery, and then I'm on with you guys now, and then I've got a few jobs to do. I'm going to get a gym done, and then I'll pick the kids up from nursery later, and then have them till my missus gets back. But it is nice in a way, and it's good for our players that have been playing 4-day cricket. And obviously our lads are playing now, and the schedule is obviously unrelenting for them. But for some of the guys that are obviously playing 4-day cricket, they can actually have a few days off. They'll play maybe Blast Friday, Sunday, and then they can have Monday, Tuesday completely off. Don't come to the ground. Go away. Do what you need to do. So there is swings and roundabouts. If you do need a break, there is actually a chance to get it. Like this now, obviously we've just played 8 group games in the Blast, and I've now got 2 weeks without a game, which is actually quite nice in a way. So this week I'm not going to bowl till Friday. I'm gonna have a week off bowling, which is just nice as a mini break. Just do a couple of gym sessions, have a bowl on Friday. I'm going to go in. England under 19s are actually down here at home next week, so I'm going to go in and have a bowl with them and stuff, and do a bit of work with Mike Yardy, who's the head coach of the 19s, who obviously I know well, and do a bit of work with their bowlers and stuff. So I'll use that as a bit of a training start of next week before we then play again. I'm not bowling at the England under 19s batters.
That was my next question.
I'll be thrilled.
No, I'm just gonna go and have a bowl with them in the middle and stuff. But yeah, so it's the schedule for me not having to play 4-day cricket is okay this little bit. But yeah, our boys now are obviously, they're batting at the moment. Luckily, they bowled out Leicester for 260 or whatever it was. But there'll be a lot of bowlers out there who will have just played a load of Blast cricket and then had to bowl 25, 30 overs, and that's hard work as well.
As a Blast captain, you sort of sit there with your fingers crossed that through these 2 weeks that everyone comes back to you pretty fresh and in one piece.
Yeah, and look, our Sussex's last championship game before we played in the Blast, the boys did over 2 days. Over 2 days in the field at Middlesex, and you're right. I was literally watching the stream or watching the game that was, Middlesex were just scoring 500-600 or whatever it was, and it was pointless. And luckily, John Simpson, the 4-day captain, was good and pretty much bowled the spinners for large parts of it. And because there's not much merit in just bowling seamers into the ground, but yeah, you want you guys to get through it and make sure that they're not going to get picking up injuries and that coming back into the games.
I love, in terms of, my main thought when you were explaining your kind of day-to-day at the moment, I was like, it sounds like one Blast match a week would be perfect. It sounds like a wonderful schedule, a really nice, relaxed time.
I want to play. When you're playing, you want to play. You don't want to be training when you kind of, especially if I'm playing franchise cricket. Once the tournament starts, you don't really want to be training, because you're not training to get better. Really, you're more training just to tick over. So yeah, you just want to play. So playing just on a Friday would be, there'd be long weeks for sure.
With your position now, like with your position and the way that the franchise circuit is now, like what I don't know, like how do you look at your year? Like there are so many opportunities. I think there's a Cayman Islands T10 that's popping up over the back end, the 100 and stuff. Like, is there stuff that is wise not to do, if that makes sense? Like obviously a lot of comps, a lot of opportunities, a lot of different sort of points on the ladder, let's say. Someone like yourself, Cal and I were talking about this yesterday, like someone like yourself who's you've got nothing to prove to anyone. Like you're not gonna, if you went and played the Caymans and went really well, you're not gonna get picked. You went well in the Caymans, but you're probably not gonna get picked elsewhere if you go badly out there. I don't know. Is there stuff you just look at and think that's not for me? Like, and if so, like what is that? Are you still looking for the top opportunities you can find?
No.
I was to say, name the leagues you'd never play in.
No, do you know what I mean? Though?
I know what you mean. So for me, it's more my body and my family. Those are the two things that I have to take into consideration. And then, is it? I try not to do. I won't do 3 tournaments back to back if I can help it, because I know that's just going to increase the likelihood of getting injured. And then obviously I've got a young family. I've got 2 kids. I don't want to, if possible, spend months and months without seeing them. That's obviously it's not fair on my kids. It's not fair on my wife. But also then I need to cash in and earn whilst I can. And I'm 31 now. I'm 32 in August, so I've still got a few years left in me, I hope. But no, there's certainly not competitions I won't go and play in. If it's a good contract offer and I'm available, and as long as it's you don't want to go places thinking, okay, I'm probably not going to get paid here, or as long as they're kind of pretty reputable or they're sanctioned, and they're obviously sanctioned, then I'll certainly go and play in them. There's no reason to not do it. It's a job. It's a job at the end of the day. The one thing that I guess the only thing that I won't do is I won't do anything that compromises Sussex. I've always been very steadfast in that. I've signed an extension here with Sussex on on the proviso that I'm going to be fully available for the Blast every year. So I'm Sri Lanka or whatever is happening shortly. Those are or America, if that does ever clash with the Blast. Sorry, those are two competitions that I won't go and play in. Sussex give me so much more over 12 months of the year that I could get for a bit more extra cash in for 3 weeks in July. So that's from a moral, I guess, side. That's the only line I draw. Aside from that, it's fair game pretty much. I'll go wherever the jobs are for the rest of the year.
As a kind of final question, I remember asking a player this just in a conversation where I kind of said, if you could choose any one kind of T20 competition to win in a year, kind of what would it be? And I expected him to say his kind of domestic competition. He said, mate, kind of all of them mean the same to me. And I didn't mean to start it out as an arsey question, but it kind of it turned into one. So I was like, surely that's not true. Surely like your home one where you have the most allegiance to is the one that matters the most. And he was like, no, mate, like I'm away at a competition next week and there's IPL involvement there. And so if I do well in that competition, that means I might be able to get a life-changing deal in the IPL. And so actually, from a professional standpoint, each game matters as much as the other, as much as a cliche as that sounds. Is that a sentiment you'd share, or would you go like, no, Sussex is like home is where the heart is, the Blast would come first, or, it'd be great to win an IPL, kind of, etc.?
Yeah, good question. I think it's a tricky one to... So I guess twofold for me. I'd love to win the Blast with Sussex just because I haven't done it. I've been here so long. I said the club have given me an awful lot in the last 10 years. So I think winning, especially now I'm captain, it would mean even more. But I would love to win the Blast with Sussex. I think that would mean an awful lot more. If that wasn't the case, you took that out of it. The answer is the IPL. If you win the IPL, you're set up. You get the.
That's cool. Yeah.
If we're being honest and just being completely blunt, the prize money you get for winning the IPL is huge compared to any other league in the world. The owners will often double it, and you're probably going to get retained, highly likely, for the next year, and your value and your image in India will go up by being part of a successful IPL winning team. So yeah, if we're just being really honest, you want to win the IPL. I've been to the IPL twice and finished bottom each year, so I've done the opposite of that. But aside from that, but aside from those two, so yeah, they do all kind of blend in, I guess, a little bit. But I think the one thing that from the tournaments I have won in franchise cricket, I think the coaches and the environments that they're able to build certainly makes it more enjoyable when you win, if that makes sense, because you've got to the end of a journey, even if that journey is only 4 weeks and you've won it sometimes feels a bit better because you do actually care about the people that you're with, even if you're leaving them and you might not ever see them again. I went to the PSL just now and we won it, and we had a really good group, and Mike Hesson did a good job at creating that atmosphere. But even though it was only 5 weeks, it just meant that a little bit more when you win. The Perth Scorchers, when I was the same there, that felt really, really nice because you really cared about the boys that you're playing with and you have a good time off the field and those type of things. So it varies tournament to tournament, but yeah, I think Sussex would be number one, and then winning the IPL would just be number two, I think.
God, just to jump in on that, like your career's always been dictated by your body, like going back to when you had to go T20 only, like looking back on however long that's been now, like this is very theoretical, but if the career you've had because of the way cards have fallen versus started out and when you were bowling quick spells at England's Ashes lot before, like go back, if you take yourself back to there, like would you have had it any other way? If you could look back, go guy, not be running and playing 40 champion games a season, but look back at, I don't know, you look at guys who've someone like Joffrey, obviously at a T20 World Cup now, won a 50 over World Cup, played Ashes series. Like, have you ever stopped thinking about what it could have looked like, or like not like just in terms of the structure of your career? Or
I certainly don't look back on my career with any regret, because I could have had to retire when I was 22, but then by the time I was 24, I played for England and got an IPL contract, or 25, however old I was, and things have obviously gone brilliantly. So I certainly don't have any regret. But I still would have loved to have played Test cricket or 4-day cricket. I played quite a bit of 4-day cricket when I was younger. I just wasn't particularly good. I think I'd be better if my body was able to do it now. I think I'd be better, suited. I still bowl in the nets with the red ball at the boys and stuff, and still fancy myself to take a few wickets. Because winning 4-day games and what I assume winning Test matches is so much more rewarding than winning a T20 game. So those highs and that camaraderie and that time you spend with people, like just as I mentioned, you do sometimes get with T20 when you do have a really enjoyable month or whatever. That would be magnified so much more with those boys that play Test cricket. You go on tour or you're in a Test series, you obviously spend so much time together, and it makes winning that much more special, I'm sure. So I guess if I could go back in time and figure out what was going on with my back or whatever, I'd have loved to have tried to play Test cricket, but obviously I don't know if I'd have been any good. I don't know if I'd have ever made it, but as I say, I'm not going to complain. I've been very, very lucky and very fortunate, and the one thing that it did allow me to do was focus on T20 cricket from a young age, and from that moment my T20 cricket went it accelerated so quickly because it was all I was thinking about physically, mentally, tactically. So I don't know if I would have achieved anywhere near as much as what I have done playing T20 cricket if I was still trying to play 4-day cricket as well. But there certainly are bits of 4-day cricket that I miss. Being around the boys, like I'll go to the ground later and see the lads, and just being around in the changing room, or away trips and stuff. Those are the bits that you do miss. So a little bit of, I don't want to say regret, but what could have been, but
sort of intrigue more.
Yeah, 100%. But I'm not.
90 mile an hour left arm, you'd have been wrapped up in all the cotton wool in the world, wouldn't you?
Maybe. If I stayed fit,
you'd be in Australia already.
maybe.
Well, I'm looking forward to a year's time where Tymal Mills' mantelpiece has the Blast, the IPL, and the Cayman Islands T10 trophies lined up next to each other. Tymal, thank you very much for joining us. Nick, thank you very much for joining us. Nobody covers county cricket like the Cricketer, and you can get access to our coverage of all 18 teams online from as little as £3.99 a month. Our own top team of county champions. I always get that sentence wrong, Tymal. It's really frustrating. Have now won the outstanding online coverage of domestic cricket prize at the ECB Domestic Cricket Journalism Awards for 6 years running, so you don't have to take our word for it. Just click in the show notes to subscribe. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Tymal. Thank you, Nick. I've been Cameron. You've been listening. You've been watching on YouTube. We'll be speaking to you again next week. I know. I just thought I'd mix it up to make it special, to make it more interesting. Thank you. Goodbye. We'll see you again next week.
Cheers, guys.